The snow didn't reach his feet. I moved to the outskirts of a small Midwestern town because I wanted to disappear for a while. No roommates, no noise. Just work, sleep, and snow. The house sat alone at the end of a narrow road that rarely got plowed. In winter, it felt like the world stopped a mile away. I liked that. Silence made it easier to think. One night in late January, a blizzard rolled in faster than expected. By sunset, the wind was screaming hard enough to shake the windows. I lost power around 8 p.m. and lit a few candles, assuming I'd sleep through it. At around 10, I heard something I wasn't expecting. Footsteps. Not on the road, on my porch. I froze. No one had any reason to be out there. The visibility was near zero, and the temperature had dropped below 10 degrees. Then came a knock. Slow. Careful. 3 taps. I didn't answer. I stood in the hallway listening to my own breathing. After a moment, the knocking returned, this time louder. A man's voice came through the door. "Please, I need to warm up." I cracked the door just enough to see him. He stood under the porch light, shoulders hunched, face pale. Snow clung to his coat and hair, but something felt off immediately. The snow around his boots was untouched, perfectly smooth. No footprints leading up to him, no tracks behind him. I asked where he came from. He smiled, teeth chattering. "Been walking a while." I told him I'd call for help. His smile faded instantly. "I don't think that's necessary," he said. I shut the door and locked it. That's when he started walking around the house. I could hear him circling slowly, stopping at windows, tapping lightly on the glass like he was checking to see if I was watching. I grabbed my phone and hid in the bathroom, whispering to 911 while the wind howled outside. Then the tapping stopped. For a long moment, there was nothing but the storm. Relief washed over me, until I heard the back door handle turn, hard, violently. The door shook once, twice, then went still. I stood there shaking, convinced it would burst open. It never did. The police arrived just after dawn. They searched the area and found no one. No footprints, no damage, nothing. Before they left, one officer asked me to step outside. He pointed to the porch. "There aren't any tracks," he said, "except these." Leading away from my door were footprints, but they didn't sink into the snow. They rested on top of it. Like whoever made them didn't weigh anything at all. I moved out 2 weeks later. Sometimes, when it snows heavily, I still hear knocking in my dreams. And every time I wake up before I open the door. If you want. I learned quickly that snow changes how sound works. When I moved to northern Wyoming for a seasonal surveying job, the locals warned me about it. They said snow made everything quieter but closer, like the world leaned in to listen. I rented a small prefab house outside town. 1 bedroom, a wood stove, and nothing but open land in every direction. On clear days, it was peaceful. On stormy ones, it felt like the house floated in nothingness. The night it happened, visibility dropped to 0 within minutes. The forecast said, light snowfall. Instead, the wind slammed into the house hard enough to make the walls groan. I lost cell service first, then power. I fed the stove, layered up, and told myself to sleep through it. At some point after midnight, I heard someone call my name, not shouted, spoken clearly, from outside. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. No one knew I was out there. I hadn't met a single neighbor. I told myself it was the wind, that my brain was filling in gaps. Then it happened again. Same voice, same calm tone, closer. I crept to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to look out. The porch light was on. Standing at the edge of its glow was a figure, tall, unmoving. Snow blasted sideways around him, but none of it touched his shoulders. It bent around him instead, like he occupied a pocket of still air. I couldn't see his face. I backed away from the window. The front door creaked, not opened, tested. Slow pressure against the handle. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The stove popped softly behind me, far too loud. The pressure stopped. Footsteps crunched away from the door. Then I heard them again, circling the house. No urgency, no confusion. like whatever was outside already knew every entrance. When the footsteps reached the back wall, they stopped. Right behind my bedroom. Something scratched once. Not at the door, at the wall itself. A single long scrape, measuring. I grabbed my keys, my coat, and the emergency flare from my pack. I didn't care about the storm anymore. Staying felt worse than leaving. I yanked the back door open and ran. The cold hit like a punch. Snow swallowed my legs instantly. I didn't look back until I reached my truck. That's when I saw it. The figure stood where I'd been moments before. Closer now, still faceless, still untouched by the storm. I slammed the door and turned the key. The engine struggled, coughed, then caught. As I pulled away, my headlights passed over him. He had no shadow. By morning, the storm was gone. No footprints surrounded the house, no tracks led away. I quit the job 2 days later. I don't live where it snows anymore, because once you realize something can move through a blizzard without leaving a mark, you understand it was never lost. It was waiting. The last door on the plow route. When the county plow driver warned me that my house was the last stop on his route, I didn't think much of it. I just bought the place, a small, aging farmhouse in rural Montana. The road dead-ended at my driveway, which meant if anything went wrong in winter, help wouldn't arrive quickly. Still, I worked remotely and liked the isolation. The storm hit on a Tuesday night. By dusk, snow stacked against the windows, and the wind made the house groan like it was tired of standing. The power cut out around 9 p.m. I lit candles and kept the radio on low until the signal dissolved into static. At 11:17, headlights swept across my living room wall. That alone was strange. No one drove this road at night. There was nothing past my house. I watched through the window as the lights stopped at the end of my driveway. The engine idled for a long time. Too long. Finally, the headlights shut off. I waited, expecting a door to open. Nothing happened. Then came the knock. One sharp knock. Then another. Then a pause. I asked who it was. The answer came from directly behind the door. Plow. That didn't make sense. The plow always came earlier, and I hadn't heard chains or hydraulics. I cracked the door. A man stood there in a reflective jacket, face partially hidden by a scarf. Snow whipped violently around him, but his jacket wasn't moving. "I need to check your basement," he said. "For what?" I asked. "Flooding," he replied instantly. My basement was bone dry and unfinished. No pipes down there. No reason for anyone to check it. I told him I'd call the county. He lowered his scarf slightly and smiled. "You won't get a signal," he said. "You never do in storms like this." That's when I noticed his boots. They weren't wet. I closed the door and locked it. The knock returned, heavier now. "You don't want to be alone tonight," he said calmly through the wood. I backed away, heart pounding. Then the knocking stopped. Minutes passed. I thought it was over until I heard metal scraping stone. From beneath the house, my basement door handle began to rattle. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and hid in the pantry while the sound below grew louder. Slow footsteps on concrete. Something moved directly under the floorboards. Then it spoke again. "This house remembers me." I don't remember how long I stayed hidden. When dawn finally came, the storm had cleared. The road was plowed clean, right up to my driveway. The county confirmed no plow had been sent that night. When I went outside, I found one set of footprints leading from the road to my door. They stopped there. No prints led away. And when I sold the house months later, the inspector asked me one question I still think about. Why did someone install locks on the outside of the basement door? Rural South Dakota, because I wanted silence. Not the peaceful kind you hear in nature documentaries, but the kind that presses against your ears and reminds you that no one is coming to save you. After years of living under my parents' roof, isolation felt like freedom. The house I rented sat alone on a long stretch of snow-covered land. The nearest neighbor was far enough away that their porch light looked like a star on clear nights. Winters were brutal, but I told myself that was part of the appeal. For 3 years, nothing happened. Then the blizzard came. It started while I was at work. Heavy snow, fast wind, The kind of weather that turns familiar roads into white tunnels. My boss sent us home early and I barely made it back before visibility dropped to nothing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my truck was already sinking into the snow. When I reached my front door, the lock wouldn't turn. At first I laughed it off. Then panic set in. The metal was frozen solid. No amount of breathing on it or forcing the key helped. The wind was howling, snow piling up against my legs. I retreated to my truck, hoping to wait it out. 10 minutes later, I realized I was trapped. The snow had buried my tires deep enough that driving out wasn't an option anymore. The heater wouldn't last forever. I had no cell service. My only choice was to walk. The closest house took nearly 20 minutes to reach, and by the time I knocked, my hands were numb. The door flew open suddenly, hard enough to make me jump. The man who stood there looked ordinary, middle-aged, tired eyes, flat voice. He introduced himself as Joe and let me inside without hesitation. The warmth was immediate. Too immediate. Almost suffocating. Joe talked, but his eyes never stayed on me. They kept drifting, toward the ceiling, the hallway, the corners of the room, like he was listening for something else. When I asked if I could sleep, he agreed quickly and pointed to the couch. When he turned off the light, he didn't leave. I could feel him standing there in the dark, watching. Only when my breathing slowed did he finally walk away. That's when the noise started. Heavy thuds above me, scraping, slow, deliberate movement. The house didn't have a second floor. A sudden crash made me sit upright, and Joe was back in the doorway. Before I could speak, he rushed me. His hands went for my throat as he screamed about her being lonely, about how I wasn't supposed to fight. I don't remember how I escaped, only that I ran into the storm barefoot, lungs burning, heart hammering. The next house saved my life. The people there told me what everyone knew but never said out loud. Joe's wife had disappeared years ago. No body, no investigation, just silence. I still live in that house, and every time a blizzard comes, I make sure my door opens easily, because I know exactly what waits if it doesn't. I told myself moving would fix it. New state, new job, new house tucked into a quiet neighborhood where the snow still fell heavy, but not the way it did out there. I avoided rural roads, avoided isolation, avoided the kind of silence that stretches too long. For a while it worked. Then winter reminded me that distance doesn't matter to some things. The first sign was small, a noise complaint from my downstairs neighbor. She asked if I'd been pacing at night. I laughed and said no. She didn't laugh back. She said the footsteps sounded slow, careful, like someone learning the layout of the apartment. I started sleeping with the lights on. A week later, the building lost power during a storm. Not unusual. Except the backup generators kicked in immediately, everywhere but my floor. The hallway outside my unit stayed dark. When I opened my door to check, cold air rushed in, thick with that familiar winter smell. Snow. It shouldn't have been snowing inside. I closed the door and slid the deadbolt. Something brushed against the other side almost immediately. Not a bang, not a push. A hand. I backed away until I hit the kitchen counter. I could hear breathing now, shallow and patient. The door handle turned slowly. Once, twice, like someone confirming it wouldn't open. Then came the whisper. Not a voice I recognized, not Joe's. She's waiting. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, the hallway was normal again. Clean, dry. Management said there'd been no outage on my floor. No reports, no maintenance records. Things escalated after that. My mirrors began fogging without steam. Words appeared, always faint, always gone before I could photograph them. Up. Listen. Once, just my name. The worst night came during the first real blizzard of the season. I woke to the sound of dragging above me. I live on the top floor. The ceiling bowed slightly in the center, dust shaking loose. A deep thud followed, heavy enough to rattle the light fixture. Then another. Slow. Measured. Moving. I called the police. While I waited, the sound stopped. Complete silence. When officers arrived, they found nothing. No attic access, no damage, no explanation. One of them asked if I'd ever lived in South Dakota. I didn't answer. He told me something off the record before they left. He said this wasn't the first call like mine. People from snowy states. People who'd survived storms they shouldn't have. People who described the same pattern, being helped, being spared, being followed. That night I dreamed of a woman standing in the snow, face hidden by shadow. I couldn't see her mouth, but I knew she was smiling. When I woke up, frost covered the inside of my bedroom window. On the glass, traced by a finger from the other side, were 3 words. I don't live there anymore. I don't live anywhere long. And when winter comes, I don't wait for the locks to freeze. I leave first. Because I know now, it isn't trying to get inside. It's already with me. I stopped unpacking boxes. Every time I moved, I told myself it was temporary, so there was no point. Clothes stayed folded in suitcases. Furniture stayed minimal. If you don't get comfortable, it's easier to leave when the temperature drops. I track winters now. I don't look at calendars anymore. I look at forecasts. The first sustained freeze is when I start planning my exit. Friends think it's a quirk. Employers think I like remote work for flexibility. The truth is simpler. I don't stay once the snow starts listening. The thing is, it doesn't follow me right away. It waits. That's how I know it's real. The first winter after the apartment, nothing happened. No sounds. No frost where it didn't belong. I almost believed the officer had been wrong. Almost believed trauma had filled in the gaps. Then I noticed the pattern. It doesn't come when I'm afraid. It comes when I relax. The second year I stayed through January. I'd started sleeping better, letting the silence feel normal again. One night I woke up warm, too warm. The heater had shut off, but the room felt full, like breath had been trapped inside it. The ceiling creaked, not settling noises. Wait. I didn't look up. I learned that lesson early. If you don't acknowledge it, it takes longer to act. A fine dust fell onto my blanket. Insulation. Drywall. The sound moved slowly, inch by inch, until it was directly above my chest. Then it stopped. I whispered out loud. I didn't open the door this time. The reply came from inside the room. She did. The air went cold instantly, my breath fogged. I felt pressure sink into the mattress beside me as if someone were sitting down carefully testing my reaction. I kept my eyes shut until morning. When the sun came up, the imprint was gone. No damage, no dust, no sign. That's the worst part. It never leaves evidence unless it wants to. I tried therapy. I tried medication. I tried staying in warmer states, telling myself I could outrun it by avoiding winter altogether. It followed me anyway. Cold doesn't require snow. It just needs permission. The last time I saw her, really saw her, I was awake. No storms, no warnings. Just a quiet evening in late fall. The mirror in my bathroom fogged as if someone had exhaled onto it. I didn't wipe it away. Her outline formed slowly, standing behind me, taller than I expected, bent slightly like she'd forgotten how bodies work. When she moved, the reflection lagged, like she wasn't fully synced to the world. "You keep leaving," she said, voice layered, as if Joe's was trapped underneath. "I didn't mean to," I told her. She tilted her head. "Neither did I." The mirror cleared. I was alone again. I still move. I still watch the weather, but I understand something now. The door I opened wasn't made of wood or metal. It was a tension. And as long as I remember them, Joe, the storm, the ceiling above me, I'm not running from winter. I'm carrying it. Blizzards have a way of shrinking the world. That night it felt like my house was the only solid thing left on Earth, floating in a white void. I lived alone in a rental on the edge of town, the kind of place where the road lights stop and the trees start leaning closer. When the storm warnings came, I did what everyone does. I stocked up, locked the doors, and told myself it would pass. By 9 o'clock, the wind sounded like something alive, circling the house, testing it. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard a dull thud outside. Not sharp enough to be a crash, more like something heavy settling where it shouldn't. I ignored it. Storms make noise. That's what they do. Then I heard the horn. It wasn't a real honk. It was weak, hesitant, like someone pressing the steering wheel without conviction. I went to the front window. Through the blowing snow, I could barely make out headlights at the end of my driveway. No movement. No door opening. Just the lights, staring back at the house. I told myself not to go outside. 10 minutes later, someone knocked. I didn't open the door. I asked who it was, my voice louder than I meant it to be. A man answered. He said his car was stuck. He said his phone was dead. He asked if he could come inside to warm up. I cracked the door with the chain still on. He was covered in snow, his jacket, his hair, his shoulders, but when I looked down, my stomach dropped. His boots were clean, dry, like they'd never touched the ground outside. I told him I'd call for help. He asked again to come in, this time without the politeness. I closed the door and locked it. That's when I heard him walk away. Not toward the road, around the house. I called the police. While I was on the phone, I watched him through the side window. He stood still in the storm, staring up at my bedroom window like he already knew which room was mine. The banging on the back door started suddenly, violent, desperate. The whole frame shook. I grabbed a kitchen knife and locked myself in the bedroom. The banging stopped. Silence rushed in, heavier than the storm. When the police arrived, they found the car, half buried, engine cold. They said there were footprints leading to my house. Only to my house, none leading away. The next morning after the snow cleared, I found muddy handprints beneath my bedroom window, pressed into the siding like someone had been standing there for a long time. A few days later, another house nearby was broken into during the storm. Nothing was stolen. I still live here, and every time it snows, I listen carefully, because I know now that sometimes the storm doesn't bring people to your door. Sometimes it brings something that was already looking for one. The police told me it was probably just someone looking for shelter. They said storms make people desperate. They said footprints disappear fast in heavy snow. They said a lot of things that sounded reasonable in a warm kitchen with coffee steaming between us. But none of them went upstairs with me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time the house settled or the wind shifted, my eyes snapped open. Around 3 a.m. I heard something soft scrape against the side of the house again. Slow, deliberate. Not banging, not forcing entry. Listening. When morning came, I found something new. The handprints under my bedroom window were still there, but now they were joined by something else. Long streaks in the snow beneath them, as if whoever had been standing there had dragged their fingers downward, slowly, like they'd lost patience. I tried to convince myself it was condensation, melting snow, anything. That afternoon the power went out. No warning, no flicker, just silence. My phone still had signal, but every time I tried calling the utility company, the call dropped after a few seconds. Outside, the road was still blocked, plows delayed. I was alone again. That's when I heard footsteps inside the house. Not heavy ones, barely there, moving from the kitchen toward the hallway. I stood frozen in the living room, knife in hand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. I called out, asked if anyone was there. No answer, but the footsteps stopped. That night I dreamed I was standing at my front door, chain unlocked, my hand already on the knob. On the other side I could hear breathing, slow, calm, patient. In the dream I knew if I opened the door it wouldn't rush me. It would just step inside. I woke up screaming. The next day I found mud on my kitchen floor. Not footprints, handprints, leading toward the hallway. I left the house after that. Packed a bag, stayed with my brother for a week. When I came back, everything looked normal. Too normal. The mud was gone. The marks outside were gone. But something else had changed. Every night after that, during snowfall, my security camera would trigger motion alerts. Always at the same time. Always at the edge of the driveway. The footage never showed a person. Just headlights turning on for a second, then shutting off. No car, no engine noise. Just the suggestion of something arriving. I moved out 6 months later. The landlord told me the previous tenant left suddenly during a winter storm too. Didn't even come back for their furniture. Just vanished. I don't live near snow anymore, but sometimes late at night, I still hear a faint knock in my dreams. Soft, polite, patient. And I always wake up knowing one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever came to my door that night didn't need to force its way in. It was just waiting for me to give up. I thought moving would end it. Different state, different climate, no snow, no long, silent nights where the world disappears. I told myself the thing at my door belonged to that house, to that storm. I was wrong. The first sign came during a heavy rain. Not a blizzard, just one of those nights where the rain falls so hard it drowns out everything else. I woke up to a familiar sound, a single muted thud outside my bedroom window. Too soft to be a branch, too deliberate to be debris. I didn't look. I lay there staring at the ceiling, heart racing, waiting for the next sound. It never came. The next morning I found muddy streaks beneath the window, handprints, lower this time, like whoever made them had been kneeling. I installed cameras after that, inside and out, motion sensors, door alarms, everything. The house felt less like a home and more like a monitored container for something fragile. For weeks, nothing happened. Then one night my phone buzzed with a notification. Front door, motion detected. The live feed showed my porch. Empty. The light flickered once, then steadied. I was about to dismiss it when I noticed the snow. No, not snow. Wet concrete. There were no footprints, but the porch swing was moving, slowly, back and forth, as if someone had just stood up from it. The doorbell rang. Once. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I watched the camera feed, waiting for a face to appear. Nothing. Then the audio picked something up. Breathing. Not rushed, not cold. Calm. Patient. I unplugged the camera system that night. I slept with the lights on. I told myself technology was feeding my paranoia. 2 days later, my neighbor asked me something that made my stomach drop. "Hey," he said casually. "Who was the guy outside your place the other night?" I laughed too quickly, asked what he meant. He shrugged. "Tall guy, just standing there in the rain. Didn't move for a long time. Thought it was weird." I asked if he saw his face. He shook his head. "No, just figured he was waiting to be let in." That sentence followed me for weeks, because that's when I realized the truth. It wasn't breaking in, it wasn't stalking. It was practicing. Learning where I lived, learning how long it took before I checked the door, learning how desperate I sounded when I asked who was there. The dreams came back after that. Always the same. I'm standing at a door that isn't mine anymore. The chain is gone. The lock turns easily. On the other side, someone whispers my name, not asking, not threatening, just reminding me it knows it. I don't open the door in the dream, but every night my hand gets a little closer to the knob. And I'm starting to worry that one night I won't wake up in time, because whatever followed me out of the storm is very good at waiting.